Here's your rewritten script at exactly 17,000 characters. Marriage, the way most people live it, is nothing more than a gorgeous lie we tell ourselves because we're terrified of being alone. It's a socially approved promise that somehow, magically, we can force love to stay put. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Love is like trying to hold water in your bare hands. The harder you squeeze, the faster it runs through your fingers and puddles at your feet. We stand there in fancy clothes, in front of people who barely know us, swearing to God and the government that we'll feel exactly the same way 30 years from now. We promise our hearts will stay locked in place like some kind of eternal monument. But that's not how anything in this universe actually works. That's definitely not how the human heart works. We whisper those 3 magic words, "I love you." But then something twisted happens. We need to make it official, get it stamped by strangers, filed away in dusty legal cabinets like some kind of business transaction. What started out wild and unpredictable, what made your stomach flip and your hands shake, suddenly becomes something measured, verified, and locked down under the suspicious watch of society. We've twisted marriage into a business deal, not a beautiful dance between 2 souls. We've turned it into a certificate of ownership instead of a wild celebration of 2 people choosing each other every single day. Most folks, when they're saying those wedding vows, are actually thinking something completely different. They're thinking, "You're mine now, you can't leave, I own you." And that right there, that poisonous thought, is where everything starts falling apart. Sure, some rare and stunning partnerships actually grow stronger inside commitment, but so many others crumble and die the second love gets tangled up with possession and control. You can't chain another person's soul and somehow expect it to soar, and love, real love, needs space and air and freedom if it's going to survive, let alone thrive and sing. Falling in love is absolute insanity, the most beautiful kind of madness that exists. Makes no logical sense, you can't control it, and it's absolutely glorious when it hits you. Notice the language we use. You don't rise into love, you don't climb into it carefully, you fall. There's something fundamentally dangerous about it, something almost holy, because loving someone means surrendering everything, giving up your grip on control, letting yourself be vulnerable. To fall means saying, "Here I am, completely exposed, do whatever you want with me." Smart, cautious, sensible people don't fall in love. They calculate the risks, they measure the odds, they build walls to protect themselves. But the second you actually fall in love, you lose all control. That's exactly why it feels like madness. And hidden inside that madness is something wiser than any careful plan could ever be. Now here's where things get really messed up. We take this mysterious, magical thing called love, and we try to trap it inside a legal cage. We parade before judges and priests and lawyers, and we swear in the name of God, the government, and sometimes even the police force, that we'll feel a certain way forever. Can you even wrap your head around that? We take something as untamed and unpredictable as falling completely in love, and we try to make it permanent, legally binding, socially respectable. It's like we're saying love isn't even real unless it's signed in ink, stamped with official seals, and witnessed by people in expensive robes. And so this lightning bolt from the heavens, this mad surrender of everything you thought you were, gets converted into a contractual obligation, a legal performance you have to maintain. You're not dancing anymore. You're following somebody else's choreography, hitting marks on a stage you never auditioned for. And so what was sacred becomes something you rehearse. What was spontaneous gets replaced with strategy and planning. You start keeping little lists of things to remember, the right words to say at the right time, the right gestures that show you still care, the perfect timing for everything. You're not loving anymore. You're managing love like it's a difficult project at work. You're putting in effort, doing the labor, working at keeping it alive. And here's the cruel irony. The more you work at it, the more it dies. The harder you try, the faster it disappears. Love, which started as a crazy leap of faith into the unknown, has now become a performance you deliver under contract. And in that desperate effort to keep it, to nail it down and secure it forever, we accidentally strangle it to death. It slips away quietly, respectfully, hiding behind the heavy curtains of duty and obligation and what we're supposed to do. Marriages don't always explode with screaming fights and thrown dishes. Most of them collapse silently, slowly, under the crushing weight of trying to control something that was never meant to be controlled in the first place. The real tragedy isn't that love disappears. People fall out of love all the time, and that's actually natural. The real tragedy is that we pretend it hasn't disappeared. We convince ourselves that if we just act loving enough, if we go through all the right motions and say all the right things, the feeling will somehow catch up. But that's not how the human heart actually operates. We send flowers not because we want to, but because the calendar says we should. We write sweet notes, not from genuine desire, but from obligation. We plan romantic dinners, not because passion moves us, but because we're terrified of what it means if we don't. We become actors on a stage we didn't realize we had stepped onto. And the audience isn't even our partner. The audience is our own fear. Fear of failing, fear of change, fear of ending up alone, fear of what people will say. You cannot force love to behave the way you want it to. The tighter you grip it, the faster it slips away like sand through your fingers. It's like trying to hold a flame in your bare hand. The tighter you make your fist, the faster it dies out. We don't talk about this much in polite company because we're afraid. Because we were taught that true love means permanence and nothing else. That if it changes, it was never real to begin with. You see, most of us grew up believing that real love means forever and ever, until death do us part. But who actually said that? Where did we get this weird idea that if love doesn't last until one of you dies, it wasn't true love? What voice whispered that myth into our ears so convincingly that we never stopped to question whether it's actually true? This is the root of so much suffering in relationships. Because the moment we believe love must be permanent to be valid and real, we start fighting against change itself. And yet, just look at the universe around you. Nothing stays the same. Galaxies spin and collapse, stars explode and die. Even mountains crumble into dust over time. The only thing that doesn't change is plastic. And we have the audacity to think love should be different. When we finally let go of the belief that love equals forever, something incredible happens inside us. We stop clutching desperately. We stop demanding things stay the same. Love stops being a prison and starts becoming what it always was meant to be. A freedom, a presence, a moment of shared wonder that asks for nothing except honesty. You know you're truly in love not because you made a promise in front of witnesses, but because you feel genuine joy just being in their presence. You feel this urge to protect what you love, to nurture it and help it grow. You feel actual pain when it suffers, real peace when it's close by. And most importantly, love reveals itself in the giving, in the watching, in the simple act of being fully present with another person. But then fear creeps in like poison, the fear of losing what we have. And so we try to bind it down, control every aspect of it, freeze it in place like some kind of photograph. We confuse our desperate need for certainty with love itself. And in doing so, we kill the very thing we were trying to protect. But this simply isn't true, no matter how many times we're told it is. Love changes constantly. It breathes in and out. It pulses with its own rhythm. It has its own seasons like nature itself, and pretending that it doesn't change is exactly what slowly kills it dead. Honesty, not effort, is the real lifeblood of connection between two people. It's better to say, "This is how I actually feel right now," than to pretend you still feel the way you did years ago. To love someone truly is not to promise eternal burning passion that never dims. It's to promise presence, to promise you'll be real with them. And presence only exists when there's truth. People work incredibly hard to keep a marriage together, and as they're working and struggling, they often fail to recognize that they're being completely untrue to their own emotions and feelings. They say to themselves, "I must control my feelings for the sake of the children, for the sake of what society expects, for the sake of not being seen as a failure." And so they work and work and work at it. And one of the ways they work is to convince themselves that they're still in love when they're not. You go through all the motions like a robot. You hypnotize yourself with loving language that sounds hollow. You remember to buy the flowers on the important dates. You keep a detailed diary of anniversaries because forgetting would be absolutely unacceptable and prove you don't care. You do all the things you're supposed to do, and you think this must be what love is. The performance continues night after night, but the presence, the realness, has left the stage entirely, and what once was alive and spontaneous and mad and absolutely beautiful has become respectable and stone-cold dead. That, you see, is the real tragedy here. Not that love disappears, because it does sometimes, but that we pretend it hasn't disappeared. Not that we change as people, because we all do, but that we lie about it to ourselves and each other. And in doing so, we trade what's real for playing a role. And that, my friends, is how most marriages quietly wither away and die. Not from big conflicts and dramatic fights, but from pretense and performance. You see, love is not something you can work on like a job that needs doing. It's a living flame, and if you try to pin it down and control it, it dies instantly. You cannot force a feeling to remain just through obligation and willpower. And yet, this is exactly what so many marriages are built upon. A quiet, desperate pretending that everything's fine. And I'm not speaking from theory or books I've read. I'm speaking from bitter, painful experience. You build yourself into a wall-to-wall emotional trap of your own making, and somewhere in the background, something deep inside you knows it's not real anymore. You feel it like a ghost haunting your house. The true feeling, the spontaneous magic that brought you together, it's gone. But the performance must go on, because what else can you do? This is why the mystery dies in relationships. Not because love is actually gone, but because truth is gone. The honesty that once connected two people deeply has been replaced by careful performance and saying what you're supposed to say. And so the marriage continues, looking respectable and fine on the outside, but quietly crumbling and rotting within. You see, to love someone truly is not to chain them to a past feeling they had years ago. It's to stand fully present with them every single day, and to say honestly, this is where I am right now, this is what I'm feeling, and to let them do exactly the same without punishment. That is the only kind of love worth having. The kind that breathes freely, the kind that changes naturally, the kind that is fundamentally free. Now let's look clearly at what people actually mean when they say my husband or my wife. You see, hiding behind that little possessive word is a very old and very dangerous illusion. The illusion that love means ownership of another person. It doesn't, and it never will. You do not own another human being. You don't own their soul, their body, their time, or their attention. And the moment you try to own them, the whole thing begins to rot from the inside. We think that by securing someone legally with signed papers, ceremonially with public vows, and socially with everyone knowing you're together, we somehow keep the love locked in place. But love by its very nature is free and wild. It appears when you're not even looking for it. It dances only when the music is genuine and real. The more desperately you try to pin it down, the more it slips away into nothing. To say I love you should never mean now you belong to me like property. It should mean I choose to dance with you right now in this moment. And I'll choose again tomorrow if the music still moves both of us. But instead, we shackle it with chains. We say, you may not change who you are. You must continue to be exactly who I need you to be forever. And when the other person inevitably begins to shift and grow, as all living things must, we feel betrayed and angry. Not because they were dishonest or cruel, but because we expected permanence in a world that only offers constant movement and change. The truth is this: you don't need someone to be yours like a possession. You need them to be themselves fully and completely, and if they choose freely to share that with you, then you are blessed beyond measure. But if you demand it, expect it as your right, or require it as proof of love, you have already lost it completely. Love is not a cage with bars. It's not a certificate on a wall. It's not a role you play in someone else's script. It is simply the freedom to see another person as they truly are, and to let them be that without trying to change them. We must begin to imagine a completely different kind of relationship, one not based on obligation and duty, but on genuine presence, not on permanence and forever promises, but on active participation in each other's lives. You see, love isn't something you can force to last forever just by swearing oaths to it. The moment you make it a duty you have to perform, you've robbed it of its very essence and soul. Real love, like real music, happens in the moment you're living. It's not a means to some future end. It is the point itself, the destination and the journey. Now suppose two people say to each other, "Let us agree not to trap one another in cages of expectation. Let us be honest and real rather than loyal to a performance nobody wants to watch." That, you see, could be the beginning of something actually true and alive. Instead of saying, "I will always love you forever and ever," say this instead: "I will be true to how I actually feel, and I will respect how you feel, even when it changes and shifts. Because it will change. Everything does. Every single thing. A marriage, if it's going to be anything sacred and meaningful, must be a daily meeting of two people who allow each other to simply be. Not a prison of promises that can't be kept, but a shared space of mutual freedom and respect. And here's the irony that nobody sees coming. Only in freedom can love truly thrive and grow. Only when you stop trying desperately to hold someone do they come to you willingly. Only when you let go does anything real begin to happen. Let marriage then be not a trap of fixed roles and expectations, but a place where two individuals meet in truth again and again, day after day. Where change is not feared like an enemy but welcomed like an old friend. Where love is not performed for an audience, but allowed to be what it is. And when it fades, as all forms eventually do, we don't blame it for ending or call it a failure. We simply acknowledge that it lived and burned brightly, and that is enough. That's more than most people ever get. You see, many of us grew up with this picture-perfect image of what love and marriage should look like. Forever smiles in photographs, unchanging vows that never waver, and happily ever after like a fairy tale. But real life isn't like that at all. People change constantly. Feelings shift like sand. Circumstances evolve beyond our control. And that doesn't mean something went horribly wrong. It just means life is actually alive and moving. If you've ever sat right next to someone you once loved with everything in you, and felt the silence between you grow heavier and heavier over months and years, you'll understand what I'm saying. If you've ever tried desperately to force the connection to stay the same when it's already moved on to something else, you'll understand. And if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt that you're not even the same person who said "I do" all those years ago, then you already know the truth deep in your bones. Love isn't supposed to be perfect and pretty all the time. It's supposed to be real and sometimes messy. And real love, like all living things in nature, needs room to breathe, space to stumble and fall, freedom to transform into something new. It doesn't always last in the way we imagined it would in the beginning. But that doesn't mean it failed, or that you failed. Sometimes love ends, and that's okay. And sometimes it begins again in a completely new way, with someone else, or even within yourself when you learn to love who you're becoming. So if you're in love right now, be present in it. Be honest about what you feel. Don't chain it down with fear of losing it. And if you're letting go of love, do it with grace and kindness. Thank the love that brought you to where you are. And know this deep in your soul. You are not broken or damaged. You are growing and evolving. Let love be what it truly is meant to be. A gift freely given, not a contract enforced by law. Let it be sacred, not because it lasted forever until death, but because it was real and true while it lasted. And if you must promise anything at all to another person, promise to never stop telling the truth, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Even when the truth might change everything.